just the other day I was saying, you know, it's been really nice to have an empty garage all summer because it means I haven't been working on stuff. Nothing's been breaking. Looking really forward to not having the green truck be in the garage all winter. Oh yeah, no, that's fine. That's approved. You know, that's just so that the floor doesn't rust right there. That's all that's for. Yeah, that's what you want. That's see those little bits there, how it's like curved. There's like pieces missing. You can tell that it rubbed. Yeah, that's what you want. That's good. And then you can go in there and just kind of give it the old. So the first step to properly fixing a soft or flat tire is to completely remove the turbocharger and inspect for any missing components. So if you recall, about a year and a half ago, late April, early May of 24, I snapped the shaft in the original turbo. And basically the compressor side of the shaft was completely snapped. You could grab the wheel and move it all around the turbo like nobody was home. This time we got the exhaust side, and if I I'm spinning the compressor wheel right now, you can see that that shaft is not turning. And I grab a screwdriver, also known as a turbo shaft inspection device. You can see that nobody's home. And actually, so pretty similar failure to the last one, which makes me suspect a common issue between them. And I don't know what that is yet, but first step is taking it apart, and then we start to figure it out. Here's the turbine wheel and a bearing, I guess. This was in the downpipe. Downpipe caught it. See in there's witness marks from when it hit the housing. So for all intents and purposes, this thing's junk. I'm not gonna bother trying to rebuild this. And I've been given a bunch of thought about trying to figure out, you know, what was the common denominator here, you know, why the failure. And, you know, there's a couple things that kind of come to mind. So, you know, for one reason or another, there had to be enough pressure differential from these two wheels that the shaft was the weak link in between. Now, this is an 090 housing, which, you know, in S300 terms is a pretty good size. I don't know the relative back pressure to this compared to an S300 or a 400. I don't monitor drive pressure on this truck currently. So I don't know if it's something where that the housing is tight and, you know, it caused too much back pressure or whatever. I know that in the tunes, including the big tune, which is what I was on when this happened, there's exhaust braking that kicks in around 2,000, 2,100 RPM. I was around probably 36, 3,700 RPM during the failure. So conceivably, if you let off to shift, then it, you know, did the vanes close too quickly, create massive back pressure and snap the shaft? Is it an overspeed situation? You know, is it a lubrication issue? You know, did it wipe out this bearing? I don't know. But as of right now, and who knows, I might change my mind by the time this video comes out. As of right now, I'm looking at going to either an S300 or ideally an S400, which would be a standard, you know, some call it a fixed vane, non-VGT turbo. And really for durability. You know, initially I went with VGT, and I was super stoked about this truck having a VGT for the exhaust braking function, for the quick spool on the shifts with it being a stick, for both of those things to manifest when towing, you know, better boost recovery, the ability to have a built-in brake, not just the juice brakes on the truck. And then I kind of got thinking, I was like, well, the red truck, for what it is, does pretty good with no turbo. So I don't think I really necessarily need the braking function of a VGT to accomplish those things. And an S300 or an S400 is simpler, less expensive, seemingly more durable. I mean, I think it's pretty abnormal for VGTs to go in, under 10,000 miles when there's people out there that romp on them way harder than I do, which is frustrating and kind of a whole nother subject. So as of right now, it's Friday. It's been a week since this thing shit the bed. I've got a T4 pedestal from PPE coming, which should be here. I was hoping to have it for this weekend. Now it looks like Monday. And then a friend of mine's got a S300 frame charger that I'm going to go pick up to kind of mock up. Modifying the downpipe, not worried about that. I think we're going to be pretty close on the hot side pipe, which if I need to fuck with that, I can. The thing that I'm kind of worried about is on a VGT setup, you feed the Y bridge from the front and your turbo intake sits behind the cold side pipe. And on every S300 setup I've seen, it's opposite of that. I'd really like to get away without changing the Y bridge. I'm not too worried about this pipe itself because remember I've got this elbow down here which I could remake if I need to slide this whole thing back a couple inches. So getting that pedestal and dropping that turbo in is going to tell me a lot about what I can and can't do. I gotta think that if I'm anywhere close to lining up with the hot side pipe, I can probably sneak the intake in behind it. S400 would probably be a little bit trickier. The other thing too here is that most companies don't want to touch building an S300 or S400 kit for an LBZ because in a factory application, that's an emissions engine. Now, of course, this thing, 1996, it's emissions exempt in the state of Connecticut. So this is more or less a glider truck. And but of course, like explaining that to a diesel performance company over the phone, it's easier said than done. So anyway, as it stands, I'm waiting on some parts. I'm going to go through and kind of clean up and get ready to work on stuff because, like I said in the beginning, haven't been out here working that much this summer. So the garage isn't really kind of tuned up and ready for a project. So I got these two turbos I got to figure out what to do with. Probably rip the vane position sensors off of them. And then they're pretty much scrap. I mean, there's really not a whole lot that I think you can do with them. Everything's going to be different, assuming I go with a non-VGT. And then if I was to go with another one, I'd probably replace everything anyway. So, the decision to go with something different is just kind of like, let's do something different. And there's been a lot of trial and error with this truck. When it was a 6.5, people weren't really doing S300s at the time. So I was like, fuck it, let's put one on, and kind of the same thing here. Obviously, there's quite a bit more Duramax trucks that have Borgs on them. So a little bit more of a known variable, which is also kind of a nice thing because now I can lean on other people's experience a bit more. But anyway, enough rambling. All right, so I'm going to make the turbo install its own separate video. So just to kind of put a button on this, VGT failure. Been chewing on this now for a couple weeks that the truck's been off the road. And I think really what it came down to was back pressure. And I think that was probably caused by the exhaust brake kicking on, which is probably tuning related. But at this point, it's kind of neither here nor there because we're going to do something pretty different. So I'm going to have a video coming out with all the different aspects of swapping in a Borg S300. And I guess I'll see you guys in that one.